my mother unintentionally was conflicted about this decision and what I was having to do. She just couldn't fathom, having 8 children, how I could choose adoption. She just absolutely couldn't do this. And for whatever reason, she decided to tell all of her friends and all the people in the neighborhood I was thinking of adoption. So with that, not knowing she was doing this, I would come home because I couldn't be around my brothers and sisters. I was like an abomination, I guess. And so when I would come home, I'd get all these phone calls, or my mom would take messages, and I'd call these people up, and they would offer me everything under the sun to adopt a white baby, which really threw me into a whole different perspective of the black market of adopting a white baby, which was mortifying to me. So when I'd get off the phone, or I'd try and avoid these phone calls, I was terrified of walking out of the house, feeling like it was one of those horror movies that someone's going to come up with a scalpel and rip this kid out. So there was this enormous fear because I couldn't believe what people would go to. It was just really being thrown into a different part of a life I didn't know existed. I mean, you knew, but until you've actually gone through it or had been thrown into it, it was a shock and awe. I mean, it was almost just as shocking as the day I was told I was pregnant. Like, what? So as far as the day of going to court, it was really awkward for me because I really wasn't forewarned of the questions that they were going to ask. They were very cold-hearted to me. They were very, I don't even know a good word for it. They were just abusive in my mind, because I had been through so much through 9 months, and of course the judge didn't know, but to have him ask me, he should have, which he would have, and when the judge, it was right after I left the hospital, and I had a few minutes to take a shower and kind of get dressed up, and of course I was nerve-wracked of trying to find something to wear.
What do you wear to the judge?
It's
probably the first time you have been to court before.
And I'm thinking, I've never been to court for this, and so when I walked into the chambers, I had to go alone, and I didn't really have an advocate. I talked to the attorney on the phone. I hadn't actually met him. So here's a court-appointed attorney, and then there's my attorney and the judge, and then there was an officer. So I'm the only female in this room, so I'm already feeling so small. And then they ask the questions, are you being coerced to do this? Are you doing this for drugs? Are you doing this for money? And I remember just sitting there just wanting to scream and call them a bunch of names, like, how dare you? How dare you? And the thing was,
because it feels like an accusation, even though they're just trying to find out.
And it was just kind of like, are you serious? I mean, I wanted to go back, and if I could, record my whole life and record it back to that moment of those things I've been through, they probably would have never asked me that. But I understood that was what they.
But you didn't know that. I think that's the key, the preparation. In an independent adoption, you have the option. The first option is actually to do it in court. But I don't know if it was the case back when you were at the time. But you have now the option to do it by a court-appointed person, usually a social worker. I do a lot of these actually in independent adoptions, and I certainly some people may want to do it in court, and they may feel that comfort of doing something very official in court, and so I think there's some reasons to do it in court, but I think doing it outside of court oftentimes gives you way more leeway of how you want to do it, where you want to do it, when you want to do it. And I think as a worker, as somebody that's taking a relinquishment, it's really important for me to prepare the person that I'm doing it with what's about to happen. And I try to make sure way beforehand that we read through everything. Because it's brutal anyway. It's brutal anyway. Brutal. The language is really harsh, and it's final, and it's all these things. So you want to read it beforehand before you're even getting ready to go through
I think it would have been easier had I did have somebody that was there, and maybe another female, just the fact that it was so male dominating, and they're all standing over you and you're sitting in this chair, and I'm just thinking any minute now I'm going to get stoned to death or something. And it was incredibly intimidating and scary, and I didn't have any other options. That was what it was meant to happen. So, you know, now that they've changed that, I would have definitely dragged somebody in with me, or even the parents, and said, "You're going to sit in here with me," because
listen to what I have to hear.
I really did feel that. I kept feeling like I wish the parents were sitting here with me to see and hear what I'm having to go through and have to talk about and to deal with, because I know for a fact they didn't. And I think that would have eased my feelings, and knowing that they were going, "Oh my gosh, no, oh my gosh," you know, and does someone just grab your hand and say, "It's okay," instead of just sitting there just going, I mean, I had a horrible experience when I walked out of the courtroom. So, you know, I think it's very important that you're acknowledged what's being said and what's not being said. And if you can have somebody there as your advocate, oh, by all means. And yours, I hope, wasn't as traumatic.
Oh, no. Mine happened a day earlier than it was supposed to, or than I thought it was. I believe that there was a miscommunication, and I didn't hear what was being said. But with mine, because it was 24 hours after we had to wait, we got to do it in the hospital. So at least it was more secluded, and it was more cozy. The birth father was there. My parents were supposed to be there, but because of the miscommunication, they weren't. But then you had the caseworker, the notary, one of the nurses, or two of the nurses were in there. So we're sitting on the hospital bed, I'm holding the baby, and they're reading these things off. It's a good thing that they read them, because I got the papers prior to even birth, so that I could see what they were, because they read them and I didn't listen to any of it.
Right.
I was just like, get out of there. I mean, I asked them to leave 3 times because I didn't want to sign those dang papers. Like, those are brutal and mean, and it's like ripping every ounce of your motherhood away. It's taking it all away. And
it cheapened it.
It did. And it made me feel worthless. And I had, the third time I sent them out, I looked at the birth father and I was like, I don't want to sign this last paper. I don't want to do it. He had to take my hand and sign it. He had, like, if he was there for no other reason than that, then that was worth it. But he had to physically help me sign those last papers. And then because I
wanted to place, but you didn't.
Yes,
but the paperwork is just
it's just so mean.
Yeah.
And then because I placed with a couple out of state, I had to go back into the agency 3 days later and sign papers for the other state. And theirs were even worse. I felt that they were even worse and even more like harsh. And do you want notification if the baby dies? I was like, my kid's not gonna die. What are you talking about? Like, oh my goodness. But it was really, I mean, I'm glad that it was in a more cozy, like, comfortable place and not so harsh and I guess official, I guess, because I can't even imagine having to sit in a courtroom. I mean, I look at what you see on TV and it's like, that would scare me. As if you're not already scared.
Exactly. So do you talk to these birth parents and you give them all this information and they have an option?
Yes, yeah, so they have choices with it, and that's what's cool about it. Like what Josh kind of said is, so we read it ahead of time, you know what I mean, so that's all there. If it's through an agency around here, I'm able just to do that for my girls, you know what I mean. In the hospital, in my office, I've done it in a lot of different places, depending on where they can. If it's a father who's involved in the situation, I've taken relinquishments at banks and read things at Starbucks, you know what I mean. It's just I will go wherever they need to do to get it done. But I also love that, like I said, in an independent adoption, I love that there's choices with it now. You don't have to go before a judge. And having gone with girls before a judge and that I've just met, or in having, or those I've known for a longer period of time, and even when I've just been called in to do a private relinquishment, been court appointed, be able to do that. Even though I don't know the girl, I can be in her setting. I've done it in her home where I bring witnesses in. So she's in her setting, her couple's been there. I've had the witnesses I can pull in, I pull in witnesses usually who are birth parents, because I feel like they get it, and they can put an arm around this girl and say, you know, afterwards, you know what I mean, and give comfort and support when possible. So it's neat that there's an option now. You don't have to go before a judge.
No.
I think you just need to think about what this experience is going to be like, and realize that you do have options, and that you can set the scene, and that I always say, and you don't have to sign this right now. I'm not going to make you sign this. This is up to you. But you maybe need to think about, you know, I've talked to birth parents who said, I didn't want to do it in the hospital. One who worked at the hospital, she was a nurse, and she worked at that hospital. She didn't want to have that memory in the hospital. And she also didn't want to go home and do it in her home and have that memory in her home, you know, but some people want it to be in their home because it's comfortable and it's safe for them, you know. So you find a place that's right for you to do that, to do that, because it is hard. It needs to be, you need to set the scene as best as you possibly can, because it's hard.
And again, you can take breaks. If you're in front of a judge, it's a little bit harder to say, Your Honor, I need to take a minute. You know what I mean? Yeah. But when you're in a setting, then I'm going to go at your pace. Yeah. You know, and if I see that you need,
kick them out.
Yeah, exactly. If you need 10 minutes, if you need an hour just to, you know, have us leave the room, or if you just want to sit and talk for a little while, that's the great thing. There's flexibility there.
And us caseworkers need to be, and adopted parents need to be understanding of that, you know, because it can yeah. If I just get caught up in my just social worker hat or my worker hat, you know, not even social worker, just like doing a job, you know, it can be kind of frustrating. You know, oh, we're not ready yet. But I just have to remind myself, this is the hardest thing this person's ever going to do in their whole life, and I gotta give them that time.
Right, and it doesn't mean they're changing their mind necessarily. No. You know what I mean? It just means you need a little bit more time. You know what I mean?
I don't know about you as a birth mom, but I think as a birth mom and hearing all the things that I've heard, I am more than grateful to know that any woman who chooses to place a child for adoption, or thinking about it, or even in schools and they talk about it, to understand that from beginning to end, it really is positive. There's so much positive energy now. There's so many positive support groups. And that as social workers, you guys are taught to bring up the positive and encourage these women not to place, but to make the best decision for this child and not for themselves. And I think that's the misconception also that I think the public has out there, that, you know, there's a lot of positive to this, and there's a lot of great things to this. And from being from the old ways to seeing the new ways, I would give anything to be able to reverse and be able to say these people back with me and help me through that process, because it would have made a huge difference.